today we're going to study about technical and technological aspect. So first thing first, the technical aspect is used to find out whether the company is able to make a product with all the own resources. So first thing that you really need to consider when we're talking about technical and technological aspect is your product selection and planning. So in order you to select your product and also plan your product, you need to determine your product idea and your product selection. And after you already get your product idea and your selection, then you can go with your initial design and product creation. After you already get your initial design, then you can go with prototyping and testing. So what is prototyping? Prototype is products that are made as a trial product before a massive production. And prototype is important for massive production. So basically, prototype product is something that we made before we produce it in a really high amount of product. So prototyping is more like before you sell it to the market, then you need to check whether your product is already good in a good condition or in a good quality or something like that. And after you already make your prototype product and then you already check with whether the quality is good and it's ready to enter the market, then you can go with the implementation to assess whether the products that already started to be produced and offered in the market to have a good future. You can use a preference matrix. And how you can use your preference matrix? First is that your products are assessed through several important criteria and scored for its importance. For example, by giving an original minimum score, then find the average score. And finally, you can compare the average score with the minimum standard applied by the company. If the value is above the standard, it is considered that the product is success. Then you can go with your design process and basically you get your product in the production line. And then the next thing that you really need to consider regarding the technical and technological aspect is your quality planning. So we divided the products into two, which is good products and also service product. So when we're talking about good product here, quality that you really need to consider, there is a lot of things that you need to consider. First is your performance, and then your features, your reliability, your conformance, your durability, your serviceability, aesthetics, and fits and finish. But when we're talking about service product, then we're talking about your quality of your reliability, your responsiveness, your assurance, your empathy, and also the tangibles of your physical facilities like your building, your parking lot, your cleanliness, like that. And once you already considering about your quality planning, then you can go with the next step, which is the technology selection. So a product can be processed in more than one way. So the technology must be clearly defined. So when we make one product, one type of product, we can use several technologies. It's not only one technologies, but we can use several of it. But the weaknesses is that the technology is not necessarily compatible with the company internal and external environment. So for example, like Kodak as a leader in the camera industry, basically they face a downturn or decreasing sales because their technology is not necessarily in the external environment. But there is other criteria that you really need to consider when we're talking about your technology selection here. Is your your suitability of the raw materials used, human resource abilities to operate the technology, etc. So when we're talking about the suitability of the raw material is that, for example, when you choose your material in aluminum foil, in aluminum material, but your technology can be used in metal material, so it's not suitable, right? Then you really need to consider about this one also. And you need to consider about the human resources. When we're talking about human resources, we need an expert that can use that technology that we use. I mean, like the technology that we select. After you already choose your technology, then you can go with your production capacity. So first thing first, what is capacity? Capacity is a limited ability of production unit to produce within a certain time. So the judging is from the input or output. So when we're talking about the judging from the input, for example, like when you are in university, so the capacity of a university can be seen from its ability to accommodate students. For example, if the university is large enough, then the students, they have a really large amount of the students. But when we see that the university are, I mean, like they have a small building, then we can judge it that the students are not in a large amount like that. But when we're talking about output capacity, for example, like tempe factory is measured by its ability to produce the tempeh. So we're talking about the output. I mean, like how much tempeh is produced in, for example, like in 1 year or in a quarter time like that. When we're talking about production capacity, there's two point of view that we really need to consider. That is economic scale and also focused facility. So when we're talking about economic scale here is we're talking about the lowest cost per unit. But when we're lowest cost per unit, but when we're talking about the focused facility here, we're talking about this one. The market demand will increase or decrease so that the capacity can be increased or produced or reduced like that. So when we're talking about economic scale, we're talking about the lowest cost, but when we're talking about focus on facilities, then we're talking about the market research. If the demand for the product is fixed, whether they increase or whether decreasing like that. Next is that you really need to know your location. I'm sorry, this is not yet. You really need to know your location. When we're talking about manufacturing company, the location of the factory affect the cost. So cheap and expensive of your product price, that is the thing that affected by the location. So you need to consider about the location of potential customer or target market where the product is sold. Place of your raw material, easy to get human resource, water resources, air, electricity, adequate transport facility, factory facilities, surrounding community environment, or also government regulation. But when we're talking about service company, there's two things, not the two things. I mean, like two type of how you can planning your location. First is the customer comes to your service facility or your service provider comes to customer. For example, like hospital, customer comes to service facility, right? But when we're talking about firefighters, then the service provider comes to customer. After you already get your location, then the things is that you need to plan your layout. Again, we divide it into manufacturing industry and also service industry. when we're talking about manufacturing industry, there is three type of layout planning that you can use or you can choose based on your business characteristics. There is factory layout, there is office layout, and also warehouse layout. Sorry, this one, warehouse layout. But when we're talking about service industry, then you will need to consider your layout must be in a special consideration, your room planning, your equipment, your lighting, your color. I mean, like this is the, for example, like the wall color and also messages delivered graphically or visual appearances. So in a service facility design, this one is not closely related to the customer perception that affect the service quality in the customer's point of view. Thus, there is many factors that affected in the service facility design, like your characteristic and purposes of your company, your availability of land and space, your design flexibility, your aesthetic factor, communities, surrounding environment, and also construction and operation costs. And this is the things that we will need to consider regarding the production quantity planning. So previously we're talking about the uh, production planning, but here we're talking about the production quantity planning. So in order you to make a plan regarding how much products that you need to produce in a certain time, you really need to consider about the demand, your factory capacity, the government regulation and technical terms, working capital, and also your raw material supply. And there are three methods that you can choose in order to planning your production quantity. First, there is break-even point method, marginal cost and marginal revenue, and also linear programming. So after you already produce your quantity, after you already determine the quantity of your production, then you can go to the next step, which is the inventory management. Because after you produce the product, then you will need to consider about how you store it, how you can manage that product in inventory. So this one is in order you to anticipate the increasing of the consumer demand and also supply shortages of raw materials. And inventory management, there's things that you need to consider. There is order quantity determination, your safety stock, whether you choose it for 3 months or in 1 year or also in 6 months, and also your inventory system and also material requirement planning or MRP. So basically in technical and technological aspect, you already learn it in your operation management. And this is how you can control your quality of your product. And that's all regarding the technical and technological aspect. So if there is any questions regarding this material, then you can go ask me in WhatsApps or you can just write an email to me. Yeah, thank you.